Peter III, the 21st of February 1728, 17 July, OS 6 July, 1762, Russian, 3 diaresis, Pyotr III Fyodorovich, was Emperor of Russia for 6 months in 1762. He was born in Kiel as Karl Peter Ulrich, the only child of Charles Frederick, Duke of Holstein-Gottorp and Anna Petrovna, the elder surviving daughter of Peter the Great. The German Peter could hardly speak Russian and pursued a strongly pro-Prussian policy, which made him an unpopular leader. He was possibly assassinated as a result of a conspiracy led by his German wife Princess Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst-Dornburg, who succeeded him to the throne as Catherine II. His death could also have been the result of a drunken brawl with his bodyguard when he was being held captive after Catherine's coup. Peter was born in Kiel, in the Duchy of Holstein-Gottorp. His parents were Charles Frederick, Duke of Holstein-Gottorp, nephew of Charles XII of Sweden, and Anna Petrovna, a daughter of Emperor Peter I and Empress Catherine I of Russia. His mother died 3 months after his birth. In 1739, Peter's father died, and he became Duke of Holstein-Gottorp as Charles Peter Ulrich, German, Karl Peter Ulrich. When his aunt, Anna's younger sister Elizabeth, became Empress of Russia, she brought Peter from Germany to Russia and proclaimed him her heir presumptive in the autumn of 1742. Previously in 1742, the 14-year-old Peter was proclaimed King of Finland during the Russo-Swedish War, 1741–1743, when Russian troops held Finland. This proclamation was based on his succession rights to territories held by his childless granduncle, the late Charles XII of Sweden, who also had been Grand Duke of Finland. About the same time, in October 1742, he was chosen by the Swedish Parliament to become heir presumptive to the Swedish throne. However, the Swedish Parliament was unaware of the fact that he had also been proclaimed heir presumptive to the throne of Russia, and when their envoy arrived in St. Petersburg in November, it was too late. It has been reported that the underage Peter's succession rights to Sweden were renounced on his behalf. Empress Elizabeth arranged for Peter to marry his second cousin, Sophie Augusta Friederike, later Catherine the Great, daughter of Christian Auguste, Prince of Anhalt-Zerbst, and Joanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp. The young princess formally converted to Russian Orthodoxy and took the name Ekaterina Alexeyevna, that is, Catherine. They married on the 21st of August 1745. The marriage was not a happy one, but produced one son, the future Emperor Paul, and one daughter, Anna Petrovna. The 20th of December 1757, the 19th of March 1759. Catherine later claimed that Paul was not fathered by Peter, that, in fact, they had never consummated the marriage. During the 16 years of their residence in Oranienbaum, Catherine took numerous lovers, while her husband did the same thing she did in the beginning. The classical view of Peter's character is mainly drawn out of the memoirs of his wife and successor. She described him as an idiot, drunkard from Holstein, good for nothing, etc. This portrait of Peter can be found in most history books, including 1911 Encyclopaedia Britannica. Nature had made him mean, the smallpox had made him hideous, and his degraded habits made him loathsome. And Peter had all the sentiments of the worst kind of small German prince of the time. He had the conviction that his princeship entitled him to disregard decency and the feelings of others. He planned brutal practical jokes, in which blows had always a share. His most manly taste did not rise above the kind of military interest which has been defined as corporal's mania, the passion for uniforms, pipeclay, buttons, the tricks or parade and the froth of discipline. He detested the Russians, and surrounded himself with Holsteiners. There have been many attempts to revise the traditional characterization of Peter and his policies. The Russian historian A.S. Melnikov gives us a very different view of Peter III. Many contradictory qualities existed in him: keen observation, zeal and sharp wit in his arguments and actions, incaution and lack of perspicuity in conversation, frankness, goodness, sarcasm, a hot temper, and wrathfulness. The German historian Elena Palmer goes even further, portraying Peter III as a cultured, open-minded emperor who tried to introduce various courageous, even democratic reforms in the 18th century's Russia. Currently, a newly established union is working on a project to build a memorial for Peter III in Kiel, North Germany, his city of birth. The reign foreign policy. After Peter succeeded to the Russian throne, the 5th of January 1762, OS the 25th of December 1761, he withdrew Russian forces from the 7 Years' War and concluded a peace treaty, 5 May, OS 24 April, 1762, with Prussia, the miracle of the House of Brandenburg. He gave up Russian conquests in Prussia and offered 12,000 troops to make an alliance with Frederick II of Prussia, 19 June, OS 8 June, 1762. Russia thus switched from an enemy of Prussia to an ally. Russian troops withdrew from Berlin and marched against the Austrians. This dramatically shifted the balance or power in Europe, suddenly handing Frederick the initiative. Frederick recaptured southern Silesia, October 1762, and subsequently forced Austria to the negotiating table. As Duke of Holstein-Gottorp, Peter planned war against Denmark in order to restore Schleswig to his duchy. He focused on making alliances with Sweden and with England to ensure that they would not interfere on Denmark's behalf, while Russian forces gathered at Kolberg in Russian-occupied Pomerania. Alarmed at the Russian troops concentrating near their borders, unable to find any allies to resist Russian aggression, and short of money to fund a war, the government of Denmark threatened in late June to invade the free city of Hamburg in northern Germany to force a loan from it. Peter considered this a casus belli, and prepared for open warfare against Denmark. In June 1762, 40,000 Russian troops assembled in Pomerania under General Pyotr Ulrich, preparing to face 27,000 Danish troops under the French General Count St. Germain in case the Russian-Denmark Freedom Conference, scheduled for the 1st of July 1762 in Berlin under the patronage of Frederick II, failed to resolve the issue. But shortly before this Peter lost his throne, 9 July, OS 28 June, 1762, and the conference did not occur. The issue of Schleswig remained unresolved. Peter was accused of planning an unpatriotic war. While historically Peter's planned war against Denmark was seen by whom? As being a political failure, recent scholarship has portrayed it as part of a pragmatic plan to secure his Holstein-Gottorp duchy and to expand the common Holstein-Russian power northward and westwards. He saw gaining territory and influence in Denmark and northern Germany as more useful to Russia than taking East Prussia equally. He saw that friendship with Prussia and with Britain, following the latter's triumph in the 7 Years' War, could offer more to aid his plans than alliance with either Austria or France. During his 186-day period of government, Peter III passed 220 new laws which he had developed and elaborated during his life as a crown prince. Elena Palmer claims that his reforms were of a democratic nature. He proclaimed religious freedom, in those times a revolutionary step that not even the advanced Western Europe had taken. He fought corruption within government, established public litigation and abolished the secret police, a repressive organ started under Peter I and intended to expose it as betrayer of the state for its mercilessness and torture methods. Catherine recreated this institution and it remained present in Russia under various names until it was replaced by the KGB. He established citation needed, obligatory education for aristocrats. All aristocrats had to provide their children with education and report it to the Senate. Furthermore, in some cities technical schools were established for middle and lower class children. Peter began the reorganization and modernization of the Russian army. One of his most popular reforms was the Manifesto of February 1762 that exempted the nobility from obligatory state and military service, established by Peter the Great, and gave them freedom to travel abroad. On the day Peter submitted this manifesto, the Parliament proposed building a pure gold statue of him, but Peter refused, saying that there must be much better uses for gold in the country. Peter III's economic policy reflected the rising influence of Western capitalism and the merchant class or third estate that accompanied it. He established the first state bank in Russia, rejected the nobility's monopoly on trade and encouraged mercantilism by increasing grain exports and forbidding the import of sugar and other materials that could be found in Russia. Peter's short reign also addressed serfdom law and the status of serfs within Russia. For the first time, the killing of a peasant by a landowner became an act punishable by law. State peasants were given higher social status than estate peasants, and all peasants under the servitude of the church were transformed into the economy peasants similar to the state peasants. Peter also took further interest in church affairs, implementing his grandfather's plan to secularize church and monastic lands. Overthrow. The reign of Peter III is cast by Parma as progressive for its focus on transforming economically developed feudal Russia to a more advanced European state. Parma claims that his reform efforts were welcomed by society as a whole. It is Parma's further contention that a plot against him by members of the government and influential nobles is unjustified, that the aristocratic names in the list of conspirators belong to guards officers, those who had lost influence and impoverished families who had no access to high government positions and were forced into service. Some resentment within the guard could not have led to a change of government. A revolt of the guard's regiments against the emperor, to whom they had sworn allegiance, could only lead to an alternative emperor. Parma claims that the conspiracy against Peter III was carried out by Catherine and guards officer Alexei Grigorievich Orlov and was in fact nothing more than a murder for personal reasons. 8. With the aid of the two guards troops that Peter had planned to discipline more harshly, the emperor was arrested and forced to abdicate on 28 June. Shortly thereafter, he was transported to Ropshaw, where he was supposedly assassinated. Although no one is sure how Peter died, there is also some evidence to show that Peter committed suicide aftermath. In December 1796, after succeeding Catherine, Peter's son the Emperor Paul, who disliked his mother, arranged for his remains to be exhumed and then reburied with full honors in the Peter and Paul Cathedral, where other Tsars were buried. After his death, 4 fake Peters, 5 if Stepan Mali of Montenegro is included, came forth, supported by revolts among the people who believed in a rumor that Peter had not died, but had secretly been imprisoned by Catherine. The most famous was the Cossack Yemlian Pugachev. Under this guise, he led what came to be known as Pugachev's Rebellion in 1774, ultimately crushed by Catherine's forces. In addition, Kondraty Ivanov, who led a castrating sect known as the Skoptsi, claimed to be both Jesus and Peter III. The legend of Peter is still talked about, especially in the town where he lived most of his life, former Oranienbaum, later Lomonosov, situated on the southern coast of the Gulf of Finland, 40 kilometers west of St. Petersburg. Peter's Palace is the only one of the famous palaces in the St. Petersburg area that was not captured by the Germans during Second World War. During the war, the building was a school and people say the ghost of Peter protected the children of Oranienbaum from getting hurt by bombs. Furthermore, it was near this town that the siege of Leningrad ended in January 1944. People say that Peter, after his death, stopped Hitler's army near Leningrad, as the living Peter stopped the Russian army near Berlin. Cultural references. Peter has been depicted on screen a number of times, almost always in films concerning his wife Catherine. He was portrayed by Douglas Fairbanks, Jr. in the 1934 film The Rise of Catherine the Great and by Sam Jaffe in The Scarlet Empress the same year. In 1991 Rhys Tinsdale portrayed him in the television series Young Catherine. La Tempesta, 1958, depicts Yemlian Pugachev's effort to force his recognition as Peter III and offers a critical view of Catherine the Great, with Van Heflin in the role of Pugachev and Vive Kalinfas as Catherine. He was also depicted as a cowardly, drunken, wife-beater in the Japanese anime Le Chevalier d'Eon.